When I first stumbled across the Minecraft Steve mod for SRB2 about a year ago, back before I realised mods without a download button on their page were in fact still accessible, I was stoked to one day potentially play it. There's so much potential as to what you could do for his moveset. He could place blocks, throw ender pearls, fly with an elytra, attack enemies with swords. Sadly, due to some problems we'll be discussing in this video, some the fault of the mod and some possibly due to consistent problem with how I am able to play SRB2, I don't think the mod lives up to the possibilities. Let's jump into why. Firstly, when taking the mod as a whole into consideration, Steve is a lot more limited than he could probably be. He only has 3 abilities, only 2 of which are actually usable in most situations. Placing blocks is mapped to custom 1, throwing ender pearls is mapped to custom 2, and when submerged, massing jump allows Steve to swim. I'll start with the swimming, as it is the least in-depth and inoffensive of the 3. It functions exactly as you'd expect, being less of an actual swimming ability and more as an infinite jump while underwater, much like Tails' equivalent in the base game. Obviously, when trying to remake a character from another franchise as a mod, you want to try and include as many of their abilities as possible, but swimming in SRB2 is only really relevant in 3 stages anyway, so I can only imagine the reason why this ability was chosen was due to how a base game character had it, and so it could simply be ported over to Steve without as much work. The ender pearls are a little difficult for me to judge, because if they are consistent with how they act in the original Minecraft, they should travel in an arc shape dictated by where the camera is looking at the time. However, as I've mentioned in several previous videos, I can't move my camera on the vertical axis, so I can't tell whether the ender pearls work in the same way in this game as well. With my situation, the pearls travel in pretty much a straight line forward, which means they aren't as versatile as they could be, as they have absolutely no worth when trying to travel vertically. There are still more problems that I can't really tell the origin of though. When looking at the footage playing in the background, you can probably see that the pearls don't appear to travel consistently with the direction I'm travelling or even facing, instead going off somewhere to the side, which makes them pretty difficult to use in tandem with platforming. I tested them out a little bit to see whether they're a reskinned homing attack instead of a teleport ability, but they seem to go in completely random directions instead of focusing specifically on monitors or springs. There's a lot I can't really figure out or experience with this ability, so I can't tell whether my dissatisfaction with it is because I'm missing out on its actual potential, or just because it's quite half-baked. Steve's block placing is definitely an inherent problem with the mod itself though. You may have noticed by this point that SRB2 is a momentum platformer, so it is therefore very important that any ability that creates a platform considers that, in the majority of situations, you'll be landing on one with a great deal of forward momentum. Namely, the platform should be large enough that you have a bit of leeway with it before falling off the other end. Steve does not give you that. His blocks are absolutely tiny, and landing on one with even the smallest amount of forward movement is essentially a guarantee that you'll simply fall off the other side. Therefore, the blocks are only really useful for just moving yourself upward when starting from a still position, but because there is a 1 second delay before being able to place another block, that feels really awkward. You can hold the custom 1 button to place blocks without needing to let go, which could allow you to speed bridge over gaps or nerd pole up walls, but because of the delay, that ultimately can't really happen. I feel this specific ability could be much improved by simply making the blocks bigger and removing the delay, as that would allow them to be used more effectively as platforms and would give Steve more traversal options by letting him speed bridge and nerd pole. Maybe to balance that out, the blocks are limited and you can only get more by breaking monitors or defeating enemies. I don't really know, I'm just spitballing some ideas here. Graphically, Steve as his own character is alright. It's always going to be entertaining seeing him curl up into a ball and roll, and the speed at which he paddles when swimming is also pretty funny. When considering the other parts of the mod though, I feel a little less forgiving. The UI showing his block and ender pearl cooldowns look vaguely like the Minecraft hotbar, but only just barely. And the blocks and ender pearls themselves also feel oddly scaled with the mod. It has been a while since I last played Minecraft, but the blocks seem so much smaller in comparison to Steve, and they're also angled in a really ugly way. The ender pearls also seem pretty small, but I could possibly attribute that to the speed at which they travel, so you don't really see them next to Steve for the sake of comparison. Overall, I feel Steve is quite a letdown. For a character who could have had a lot of unique abilities, it feels like only a small number of the possibilities were included, and those that were feel half-baked at best. Again, some of the problems are probably perpetuated by some of my tech woes, but even so, I feel the character is still fairly disappointing. I'm going to give him a 4 out of 10. I hope you enjoyed the video, and ciao.